Welcome to DPC Pediatrician. We're Dr. Phil Boucher
and Dr. Marina Capella, two DPC pediatricians who are on a mission to share our love of direct primary care with you. Welcome to another episode of DPC Pediatrician. Thanks for joining us. Today we will be answering the following question. Is there work-life balance in pediatric DPC? This is a question I hear so often because people who are contemplating starting their own DPC, they want to make sure that this is something sustainable for the future for them. They want to know, is the grass really greener on the other side? In other words. All right, but before we delve into that, we want to just share some DPC wins for the week. So Phil, you start us out. What was a win for you this week?
My favorite thing this week was I got to get out of the office quite a bit to see patients, which is not something that I always do. I am often at the office, but we had a couple newborns born this week and we do newborn home visits. So we got to do those. And then I had a patient that texted me a picture of their split open forehead and they were on their way to urgent care and just said, do you think we need to go to urgent care? I said, don't go to urgent care. Just come on over and we'll take care of it. And he was a really sweet, 10-ish-year-old boy. I use lat gel, lidocaine, adrenaline, tetracaine gel. And the mom was really worried that he was not going to tolerate having stitches put in. And he didn't even flinch. I just put some lat gel on, came back later, 15 minutes later, stitched it up, saved them a trip to urgent care or the ER, just made their day. And despite the fact that when they texted me, I was out of the office, it just felt very much like I'm helping people in a real concrete way. And I love doing stitches too. So I always tell people don't go to urgent care, don't go to the ER. Text me if you need stitches because it's about my favorite thing to do. I have a nurse practitioner who was in the pediatric ER for years before starting with me.
Nice.
And so we kind of fight over who gets to do stitches. She's done way more than me because of her time in the ER. But it's always something that we really enjoy. And it's a huge win for families to avoid urgent care or the ER because they can't get in anywhere else to get their stitches taken care of. And they just get used to texting us.
Yeah, fantastic. And I can attest to the magic of Let Gel because having worked in peds urgent care, I got my fair share of stitches and that Let Gel is magical. It really, really does help. A rare occasion, kids' anxiety just, is too much. But it's not because it doesn't work. It's just because of their anxiety. But I love Let Gel. I have it too in my office. Yeah. Excellent. So for a win for me this week, my DPC win this week is I got 4 memberships in 2 days this week. So it was really nice. And one of the things that happens that I've learned is there's some weeks that are really slow in terms of memberships. And then there are some weeks where you just get a bunch of people. And it was just people, I think one of them was word of mouth and the others just found me online and they liked
it was just that's always my thing is why did 4 people join this week? But it was just random, coincidental.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I got 4 new memberships this week, which was a good feeling.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm a numbers guy and I always just like to mentally do the math. Imagine those 4 members stay with you for 3 years. That was a really big week for you from a financial standpoint too. And just to, be able to serve more patients. Yeah,
definitely. All right. So let's get back to this topic of, is there work-life balance in pediatric DPC? Phil, what would be your opinion just in general about this topic?
In the broad scope of things, I think absolutely, yes, there is work-life balance. And I think it comes in a lot of different ways, and it's not always the same as when you were in your fee-for-service model, what that actually looks like. And so I think it takes sitting down and saying, what would work-life balance look like for me? And I think one of the biggest fears, especially for pediatricians, is evening and overnight text messages and phone calls and what that's going to look like. And I think that when I talk with pediatricians that are kind of on the fence about it, that's probably the number one thing that I hear is, well, I don't want to be on call all the time. So I'll keep doing this job where I have to see 30 plus patients per day and chart all evening because I'm worried about text messages and overnight phone calls in direct primary care. And I think that it couldn't be farther from the truth that you're going to spend your evenings and overnights, dealing with fevers and rashes and vomiting and all of those sorts of things. And this I learned for me specifically. So we have about 560 members right now. And I had no idea when I started what it would look like in the evenings. But what I didn't realize is the way that I was practicing before is every patient that had an illness was getting stuck waiting till the late afternoon or evening. Their kid wakes up with a fever. They call the office. They wait on hold. They leave a voicemail. They play phone tag. It's noon before they get a call back, and they can't get in until 6 or 7. And so things stack up over the course of the day in the big model of the high volume fee for service pediatric model that most pediatricians are used to. Like, it takes forever to get in, so they're not getting in. There's patients that are then having to call in the evening. It just stacks. Well, now, despite having 560 patients, if you texted me right now and said, hey, my kid has a fever, I think they have strep throat, I would just say, can you come over? Or can you come over this afternoon at 2? Let's get you seen, because there isn't a huge volume of patients that I'm going to have to sneak between to get that patient in. So things just don't stack up the way they do. And when families are home with their sick kid, they're just at home. They don't care if they come in at 11 or at 2 p.m. Like, they just want to get seen. And so their schedule is flexible if you can be flexible with them. So it doesn't all stack up into the evenings and overnight. And in 2 years, I have never once taken a phone call overnight from a patient. And mostly because we're really good, I think, at our onboarding process and setting those boundaries in place. And like, this is what to do when you need something overnight. I do get a lot of text messages overnight. I actually encourage patients to text us at night, because the visual of them texting us really sits it well with them. When I say I get a lot of text messages at 2 a.m, not because it's an urgent thing, but it's they woke up, they're nursing their baby, they have a question, they don't want to forget, so they just text us at 2 a.m. And then I see those in the morning. I respond when the office opens and all of that. But I think that looks like work-life balance to me is, I can have my evenings. I'm not going to get railroaded and stuck in the, doing all sorts of things in the evenings, because I'm able to take care of patients during the day when their kids are sick. And if it's overnight, they know what to do. They know how to get the help that they need. And they know that tomorrow morning they're going to be able to get in for an appointment, because they're not going to have to be waiting till the phones turn on at 8 o'clock to then try and get an appointment and, wait in line in a queue. They just book an appointment online for the morning, so that they know that they'll be able to get seen.
And I love that boundary that you've set for yourself. I think that is essential, that you tell parents, yes, feel free, text me, at midnight or 2 a.m, but I'm going to respond in the morning. Right. Cool. And so I think that's where some DPC pediatricians have trouble, is that they, in the beginning, when you're opening your practice and you're desperate for people to choose you sometimes feel like, oh, I have to do everything. I have to bend over backwards for my patients so that they see the value of DPC and they love me and they stay with me. So there's that little bit of desperation, which I definitely was guilty of as well. And then as you get more comfortable and you get busier, you start to realize, oh, I can't do that for every single patient. Because then that requires me to sacrifice myself and my family time and my personal needs too much. So then people start to kind of figure out these boundaries, and it's hard though. It's better if you really have those boundaries from the beginning and you talk to people and you listen to people's stories in order to figure out what will work best for you in the long term and what will be sustainable for you. I think people who get in trouble are people who don't have very good boundaries or are too afraid to set those boundaries, but you really shouldn't be. I mean, people are going to respect you and they're going to love everything that you do, even if you're not available at 2 a.m. Right.
Exactly. I think that's a huge thing, is no matter what you do, if you are available for them during the hours that you've stated that you're going to be available, and you're easy to access in the ways that you've set up, which is probably for most pediatricians, like, parents love text messaging. And so the fact that you do that, you've already set yourself so different than what they're used to, that you don't have to go above and beyond in every way for every patient at every hour of the day for them to still have a positive and much better experience with you, that they're not going to just say, well, screw this, I'm going back to what was even worse. They're going to say, oh, they set their boundaries. They had those boundaries in place and they were available and accessible when they said they would be, which is a huge step up from the experience they were having before. So I'm happy with that. And having the continuity of the relationship, like, they're paying their membership dues every month. I know that they're happy enough that they didn't cancel. That just gives you that confidence that, okay, what I'm doing is 100% enough and adequate and providing really good care and really special ways of caring for patients. I don't have to go 3 levels above and beyond, because then I'm not going to be taking care of myself and my family and everything like I should be, because I've sacrificed that work-life balance unnecessarily.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I would say, you have, I think you shared at one point in a DPC Facebook group how you have an after hours message. So if a family
Hmm.
texts you after 5 p.m. or whatever it is, they get an automated message that says you'll
Right.
respond, later. With my practice, I tell families that onboarding, I'm available 7 days a week via text, email, phone. I will do my best to see you same day or next day if you have an acute issue. But I don't use the word 24/7
Yeah.
because, and I straight up tell families, like, I'm human. I need to sleep. I'm a deep sleeper. So I probably won't answer the phone in the middle of the night. And they're totally understanding about that. They get that. They're human too, right? And I also mention that, if it's something that's not too urgent, text me and I'll get back to you within a few hours.
Hmm.
Usually it's faster than that, but sometimes I do have busy periods where I'm seeing patients back to back and I don't get to answer everything right away, but I do glance at it. And if it's something that I can respond to quickly, I do that. If it's going to take more time, it might take a few hours to get a longer response. But I also tell them if it's something really urgent, like your kid fell and might need stitches, or,
Right.
something really urgent happened, call me. And that way
Hmm.
I know it's more urgent. And so I kind of set those sorts of expectations and boundaries in the beginning. But everyone does it a little differently. And again,
Right.
just because I do it one way and Phil does it another way, like, you can choose what your boundaries are and what your system is. Some people are, way stricter. Some people loosen the rules and do respond to some phone calls in the middle of the night. It's completely up to you.
I think that that is a really good synopsis of it works different for everybody and it might change over different ages and stages of your practice and what you
Yep.
have going on in your life. But the nice thing is you have these really good relationships with families where
Mm.
they're going to understand if you tell them, hey, something changed in our home life and I need to rein in the boundaries a little bit. They're going to be like, well, you've been so grateful to us, or you've been so helpful to us, and we're just grateful for everything that you've given. We totally understand. And we've always felt like we were asking too much. We understand completely, and we love you and we support you. I mean, just yesterday, we got to illustrate the relationships that you develop with families. Somebody had texted us a screenshot from Facebook of some dogs that somebody had written on a Facebook post. I found these dogs. I'm not sure who they are. And one of my patients just thought they might be our dogs because I post about our dogs on my Instagram sometimes. And so they
Yeah.
were like worried for me that we had lost our dogs and that somebody had found them. Like
Ah.
the level of care that patients have for you and the level of love that they have for the way that you practice and the way that you care for their children goes
Mhm.
above and beyond whether or not you answered the phone at 2 in the morning because they had the sniffles and the cough. Like they expect those things and they're going to be really respectful of those things because they know how special what you do is and the way that you practice is so different that they're going to be so respectful of that. And I find it very infrequent that we're having to like course correct of people overstepping their boundaries. But I guess I would like to know from your perspective what that's like when people exceed or ask more than the boundaries allow for. What's have you had any
Uh-huh.
experiences like that?
Yeah. I think I've had a couple where this wasn't necessarily boundary. Well, it was me setting a boundary. It was maybe just a year ago, a new family had joined and they were older parents who, and of course, older parents tend to be a little more anxious because they just have more knowledge and so more worries coming out of that knowledge. And they joined my practice. They saw their baby once or twice. And then they had sent me a message saying, hey, we noticed that you're not requiring masks in your office. And we're not sure if we feel completely comfortable with that. And this was already around the time when most hospitals and clinics had like let go of their mask mandate. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think I could have easily gotten defensive in that situation or just bent over backwards and said, just to keep you, like, I'm going to do whatever you want me to do. And I
Right.
just kind of explained my rationale. We're a really low volume clinic. So when this baby was coming in, there was usually nobody else around. The
Yeah.
rooms are used maybe once every hour. We have time to clean them in between. And so I just kind of explained our rationale and I said, but if this isn't a good fit for you, like, it's completely fine.
Yeah.
Kind of just saying, I'm not going to change because I feel comfortable with the way I'm doing it. And I'm not anti-mask or anything. It was just like in this
Right.
context, a mask was overkill, right? And
Right.
so I kind of practiced setting that boundary of like, look, this is my rationale. but if you're not comfortable, it's okay. Like you can choose someone else. Then I felt kind of weird at that time because it was one of the first times I was practicing, saying, hey, like I might not be right for everybody and that's okay. Instead of acting out of that place of desperation of like, oh, what do I need to do in order to keep you? Right. And that family ended up, they are still with me. They were fine with that answer and with the time that I took to respond thoughtfully to their question. There have been some other circumstances where families are, I would say this happens rarely, but really needy families where they are just needing a lot for any particular reason. But I think sometimes like people feed off of each other's energy. And so if a family is really anxious and bothering you and texting you over and over and you are responding right away, sometimes you kind of need to back off and delay your responses.
Right.
Or like, demonstrate to them that it's like, hey, I'm going to create some distance between this and I'm going to give you some time to kind of calm your fears naturally and then I'll respond, but I'm not going to then respond to every message with worry like right away. It really depends on the context, of course, but yeah, anyway, those are the things that come to mind. So sometimes I have to kind of delay my responses intentionally in order to just not feed into that energy from the family.
I think that's such a good strategy because I think that is another concern. I mean, the overnights and the evenings being disrupted by text messages and phone calls, and then the needy patients. Like, I think there's this idea, there was a show on USA called, it was some doctor that was in the Hamptons. I can't think, like it was some concierge doctor that like it was all the super rich people and he'd like fly to their houses and, put Band-Aids on their boo-boos. But I think that is another fear that pediatricians have of, I'm going to have all these needy patients that are just going to be super demanding. And I think my experience and in talking with other pediatricians, some will be needy. Some will have seasons of need where then you're like, there must be something going on with them where they're needing us in a different way with their anxieties and worries. And I can still put some boundaries in place knowing that this season will pass. Like I have a few families that are like that. They'll have more medical health parenting concerns and then things calm back down. And I know over time, like I've known these families for years, even some before I started my DPC. They'll have periods where they're more anxious and then it calms back down. And like I can ride those waves a little bit more easily. But I really like that strategy of like, hey, I've seen your it might just be intentionally not replying for a period of time, or it might be saying, hey, I've seen your message and I'm going to give this some thought and get back to you. Well, she must not think it's like an urgent issue if she's going to give me some thought. And then, oh, that's kind of nice. She's going to give it some thought before she responds. That must mean that like it's not just like a knee-jerk sort of thing, when in reality, you're kind of just giving yourself a little bit of breathing time and like letting things calm down rather than feed into that anxiety. And I think that those are two big concerns when it comes to work-life balance with patients in the direct primary care model.
Yeah, definitely. And I think sometimes our anxiety, because we are prone to anxiety just like our families are prone to anxiety, but sometimes we feed into it unintentionally. I might find myself complaining about like, oh, this patient this or this patient that, and then, or this patient is so needy, or this patient like wants me to fix all their problems, but they're not willing to do their part. And if I act out of that place, I kind of feed into that negative or dysfunctional cycle, as opposed to saying, hey, like I can only do so much, right? I'm not responsible for their choices and I'm not responsible for curing their anxiety either. So I need to stay in a place where I am centered and I am calm and I can be a better pediatrician if I do that.
Absolutely. And I think that rather than the specifics of the hours or things that you offer or try and boundarize, I don't know what the word would be there. Those things really make for that work-life balance that I think everybody is missing in the fee-for-service model, that you can feel comfortable and confident knowing that, okay, I can put these boundaries in place and people aren't going to reject me, especially if I tell them in advance and repeatedly, here's how our practice works. Here's what to do at this time of day. Here's what to do when you have a kid has a fever. Here's what to do when their elbow is completely fractured and sticking out of their body. Like here's the different scenarios, and here's what I want you to do, parent. And last time, oops, it didn't go quite like that. So here, FYI for the future, here's what you should do when they're bleeding profusely. Like this is the
Yeah.
appropriate thing, versus when they have a little sniffle, here's what you should do. If you reinforce that on a regular basis, then you can be confident that, okay, patients aren't going to reject me. I don't have to worry about like closing up shop because I don't help them through their stuffy nose kid at 2 a.m. Like those are things
Yeah.
that are outside of my boundaries, and I'm okay setting those boundaries. And some
Mhm.
patients might reject me, but by and large, the patients that are a good fit for this practice aren't going to reject me needing to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Thinking about work-life balance, a question probably a lot of people have is, do I get to take vacations? Because that's a big part of feeling balanced in your
Right.
life. How about you, Phil? Have you gotten to take vacations?
Yes, we like to vacation and we like to have those moments away from the rigors of life. We have 6 kids, and so life is relatively busy for us. I think we're kind of like a low speed family in general. We have done vacations. So I opened in January of 2022. We went to Florida for a week in February of 2022, which was not intentionally planned that way, but we had already planned the vacation before making the jump into direct primary care, and we didn't want to undo our vacation. And so what I did for that one was I had a pediatrician friend in town essentially just cover
Uh-huh.
for me. So calendar was blocked out, and then sick patients, my nurse or my office manager my nurse would triage them, and if they needed to come in, then they would schedule with my pediatrician friend that was covering for over her lunch hour.
Uh-huh.
And she had blocked off a little bit of time to do that. And we just paid her like a daily rate to kind of cover the clinic. And it was honestly super smooth and didn't have any
Mhm.
problems
Yeah.
whatsoever. And so that really reaffirmed for me that, okay, we can do vacations and you don't have to give up vacations for that.
Uh-huh.
Since that time, we have a nurse practitioner that works in our office as well. And so for vacations, since that one episode, like right when we opened, she's been able to cover, and we kind of plan in advance so that she can be available.
Mhm.
And then if there's things that she's not sure, she's not comfortable with, she doesn't know what to do, then she'll just text me or call me to talk through those things. When you have a lower
Uh-huh.
patient volume, like just having a blocked out schedule just for sick patients doesn't amount to a lot of visits or a lot of things coming up. And
Yeah.
so, yes, we have vacations throughout my time in DPC. And even if I didn't have a nurse
Uh-huh.
practitioner, I would still take vacations. And I would, even if I could go back in time to that first vacation, I would probably just let patients know, hey, we're going to be on vacation as a family. Here's what to do if your kid is sick and needs something while we're gone. And I truly think
Uh-huh.
that my patient families would be perfectly fine if they knew in advance that we were going to be gone, and they could mentally prepare for that if they needed something. They wouldn't leave because
Mhm.
I was going on a vacation with my family, because they know that my family is important to me and I prioritize my family when I'm at home, and I prioritize their families when I'm at work, and they would see that and be totally
Mhm.
comfortable and understanding if we were closed for a day or a few days. I mean, I don't think you could take 3 weeks off and go to Europe and just say like, see
Yeah.
you on the other side, people, but you could certainly scale things back in a reasonable way
Uh-huh.
for vacations.
Yeah. I did
What
take
about
2
you?
weeks off, and yeah, speaking of Europe, I did take 2 weeks off, and I went to Paris last September. It was our 20th wedding anniversary,
Oh
and
my
so
gosh, good
we
for
went
you.
to yeah, we went to Paris for 10 days. So was essentially gone for about 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
I did email all of my families in advance letting them know the dates that I would be gone and what to do if there was something urgent. So I
Yeah.
had my clinic partner essentially cover for me, and she was okay with that. I did occasionally get some texts coming through even abroad, but it was completely manageable, and she
Yeah.
dealt with anything in the office that needed to be seen. So you can do it. I love what you mentioned about paying someone to cover for
Mhm.
you when you needed to, and I think that's something that DPC pediatricians need to think more about. Add it to your budget when you're starting up. If it's really important to you to take vacations, and maybe take 2 week vacations sometimes,
Right.
you are going to need coverage. And you either need to set up the expectation to your families in advance and have it in your contract that, hey, there may be up to certain amounts of time that I will be unavailable. And
Hmm.
signing up for this means that you understand. I will send you an email or communication beforehand to let you know, and this is the nearest urgent care, right?
Right.
So you can do that. But I think, for quality of care, it's better probably if you have some sort of coverage while you're gone for an extended period of time. And you can completely factor that into your budget. Have some money set aside.
Right.
Like, raise your prices a little if you need to in order to have that
Right.
wiggle room so you can pay someone. Because I hear a lot of DPC doctors saying, hey, what do I do? Like, I can't afford to pay someone. Hey,
Right.
factor it into your prices so that you have that wiggle room, right?
Well, and I think the other thing that you have to keep in mind, when I was a practice owner, we had for the most part, it was a eat what you kill model. If you
Yeah.
see more patients, you make more money, which means if you go on
Mhm.
vacation, not only are you paying for Disney World and the airline flights and
Yeah.
the food and the $6 water bottles, you're also paying for the
Yeah.
fact that you're out of clinic for a week. And that cost just as much as Disney World to miss 5 days of
Yeah.
clinic. In
Sure.
DPC, when you're at Disney World, you're still making the same amount of money because
Mhm.
it's a membership model. You don't have to continue to see patients or make up for that lost revenue. I mean, if you're gone so much that patients are annoyed and say all he does is go to Disney World, we're going to go find a
Yeah.
doctor that can see us on a regular basis, then you're going to lose patients and you lose money. But it doesn't affect you
Mhm.
financially going on vacation the same way.
Yeah.
And you may say, well, we're going to go on vacation, but I'm going to have 2 hours in the morning where I'm responding to text messages or doing virtual visits or something like that. If you feel
Yeah.
like that's necessary, I wouldn't typically feel like that was necessary, especially for 2 hours, maybe 20 minutes or something. But I think that that's definitely something to keep in mind when it comes to the cost of travel in the DPC model, is that you don't stop making money and start making negative money the same way that you do in a fee for service practice.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, any other questions that you can think of related to this question of work-life balance, Phil?
What would you say if you had to look at the big picture, the key performance indicator, the KPI of your work
Yeah.
life balance for you? What would that be? Like, if you were going to say my work life balance is really good right now, like what is the key performance indicator that tells you that you have good work life balance?
For me, getting enough sleep is really important. So I ask myself, am I getting enough sleep? And I prioritize that. So the answer is
Hmm.
yes. Do I have at least one day off a week when I can just sort of relax and recharge? Yes. I actually work 4 days a week in the clinic, but I keep myself busy with other things like this DPC pediatrician project. And also, I co direct a nonprofit on the side, but
Awesome.
that's really important to me. So I'm able to kind of balance all of those things. I teach medical Spanish for my local medical school. So I have all of these things that I love doing. And
Hmm.
DPC has really given me the flexibility and freedom to structure my work life so that I can balance them all out and feel like I'm still relatively balanced. Now, there are some weeks that are crazier than others.
Sure.
Some weeks when like there's a lot of stuff to do on the business end for whatever reason. Right now, my medical assistant is helping me to enroll for VFC vaccines, and that's
Mm,
just a huge paperwork
that's a lot
headache.
of
And so it's
paperwork.
been it's a lot of
Yes.
paperwork. And thank goodness I have a medical assistant because I don't think I would
Amen.
survive that by
I would
myself.
not be able to do that without help. Yep. There's no way.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's been a little bit busier of a week, and we're leading up to the Peds DPC Mastermind next week. So
Right.
some weeks are worse, some weeks are better, but overall, I would say that I'm able to take care of myself and balance all the activities that are important to me. And so I think work-life balance is pretty high for me.
That's awesome to hear. I'm so glad for that. I'm glad that you have those indicators too, that like things are at a good place because I'm able to do this and that and get the sleep that I need.
Yeah. Yeah. What about for you?
For me, I think I would feel unbalanced if I was working into the evenings. I don't like having to give my time in the evenings to work things if I can avoid it. And so if I'm able to go home before 5 p.m., if I'm able to
Mhm.
help make dinner and enjoy evening time with our kids and then get enough sleep that I can get up in the morning to exercise and do the things that I want to do, those are the indicators for me that things aren't too
Yeah.
fast or hard. When I was in
Mhm.
my previous practice, we'd have lots of evening meetings, which I hated. And I got them
Ooh.
to change it for a little bit, but then it reverted back to evening meetings. And I hate
Yeah.
evening meetings. Like that destroys my work life balance when I'm getting home late or when the kids are already in bed or something like that. That never happens now that I've been in DPC, but that was a more frequent thing. And that really affected my ability to feel like I had compartments of work and home. Like they just bled into each other way too much in that
Mhm.
period. And so that for me is my key performance indicator. I like being
Mhm.
busy. I like doing a
Yeah.
lot of things. And so I pack my workday full of different things to do. Some of it is
Uh-huh.
seeing patients, and some of it is projects like this or creating content for
Uh-huh.
Instagram, or I
Yeah.
have too many pots on the stove at most given times, but I'm
Uh-huh.
able to shut all those pots off and let them sit and go home and just be with my family. And that's for me the key performance indicator that
Mhm.
things are in good alignment.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of pediatricians value is their home life, their time with their family. I mean, we love families and we love kids. And so it
Yeah.
makes sense that that's something that we would prioritize in our own lives. So yeah, I think it's totally possible. You have to figure out what your ideal schedule is. You have to choose what your hours will be. You have to make it clear to your families from the beginning when you will be accessible and when you won't, and what your specific boundaries are. But if you do that, I completely believe that the work-life balance that you can achieve through pediatric DPC is actually better than what you can achieve working full-time in the fee-for-service world. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. If you are intentional, there's no way that it's not going to be better than in the fee-for-service world. And you don't even have to have all the things figured out when you start. You can iterate as you go, but you're going to have a better work-life balance no matter what. If nothing else, because the volume is so much lower, that you're able to get your charts done. And then you're just going to be like, well, what am I supposed to do now? I have all this free time. And then you'll figure it out. But no matter how you slice it, the work-life balance is going to be better than in the fee-for-service world.
Yeah, I would say the one thing just to keep in mind, though, is that you're not just seeing patients anymore. You're not just a clinician who is an employee anymore. You do have to find a way to balance the business aspect of things, because you're the one responsible for filing, your re-registration and your city license and all this stuff. And if you're able to over time build a team, then you can have people to help you manage that. But in the beginning, it is a lot. You're balancing your clinician life with your entrepreneurial life, with your family life. So being intentional, just like you said, if you are intentional, you can absolutely do it.
I think that's the other thing too, that a lot of physicians don't realize. Like, you feel like, oh, there's all this business stuff, it's going to consume me. Well, I'm seeing 4 to 8 patients per day max. I can set aside 2 hours, and I can literally block my schedule for 2 hours from 10 to noon on Tuesday mornings to do QuickBooks. So yes, I have to do that, but it doesn't mean it has to bleed into my evening or take over my life. Like, you can time block for yourself and figure out those different productivity strategies that work really well for your brain and the way that you do tasks to actually get those things done and maintain a work-life balance, despite having the additional duty of making sure your licenses are up to date, paying your bills, doing your QuickBooks, those sorts of things. Like, you can have the time and bandwidth to incorporate those. And then as you grow, like you said, you can bring on team members that then can be delegated those tasks.
Yeah.
This has been fun.
Well, hopefully this has given you all a better idea of what work-life balance can look like in pediatric DPC, and will help you to decide whether pediatric DPC is right for you or not, or help you, even if you're already in this world of DPC, help you to figure out how you can set good boundaries and be more intentional about the way you balance your own priorities in your life. So thanks so much for joining us, and until next time.
Bye.